everyone, and welcome to the Deep Dive. We like to go deep on all sorts of topics, and today we're going to be diving into one that's been in the headlines recently.
Methanol poisoning.
Yeah, exactly. Methanol poisoning. We're doing this deep dive for you today because you're probably interested in learning more about just how dangerous this stuff can be, especially after seeing those news reports about tourists in Laos.
Yeah.
It can really make you think twice about what you're drinking.
Absolutely.
Especially if you're a frequent traveler like myself. So we're going to explore why methanol is such a hidden danger.
Right.
Starting with the fact that it can actually mimic the effects of regular alcohol.
Yeah, that's one of the scariest things about methanol poisoning. It's really tough to detect early on. People just assume that they're feeling a little bit tipsy or the effects of having a few too many drinks, and they don't realize that they might have ingested something a lot more dangerous.
Exactly. So before we go any further, let's break down what methanol actually is. I mean, we all know what alcohol is, right? But is methanol just like a stronger version of the stuff we usually drink?
It is alcohol, but it's a different kind.
Okay.
You might be surprised to learn that we encounter methanol more often than we think.
Really?
Yeah, it's in everyday products like antifreeze and solvents.
Wow.
Even some cosmetics have methanol in them.
Huh. I had no idea. Not exactly something I want to picture when I'm grabbing that bottle of aftershave or something like that.
Definitely not.
Yeah. So it's not like we're intentionally drinking this stuff. How does it actually end up in alcoholic beverages?
Well, that's where the danger is. Methanol is sometimes called wood alcohol.
Okay.
And that's because it's a byproduct of wood distillation.
Okay.
And sadly, because it's much cheaper to produce than ethanol, which is the alcohol we can drink safely, unscrupulous manufacturers might use it as a substitute.
So someone trying to save a few bucks could end up putting people's lives at risk.
It's awful, but yeah, that's what can happen.
It's all about cutting corners and maximizing profits, especially in places with high alcohol taxes. And this isn't just a problem in, far-off places, right?
No, it's just not.
We've seen these methanol poisoning outbreaks all over the world. It really highlights how widespread this problem is.
It does. It's a global issue.
That's a sobering thought.
Yeah.
So let's talk about what makes methanol so dangerous. What happens when it enters the body?
Your body tries to break it down.
Yeah.
Your liver, which normally processes ethanol, tries to do the same thing with methanol.
Right.
But the byproducts of this process are extremely toxic.
So it's not just getting drunk, it's actually like poisoning your system?
Right. It's like a chemical burn from the inside out.
Oh, wow.
Because methanol gets converted into formaldehyde.
Formaldehyde.
Yeah, that's the stuff used to preserve specimens.
Right.
So that should give you an idea of just how toxic it is. And then it breaks down further into formic acid.
Formic acid. Doesn't that sound kind of familiar?
Yeah, it's what gives ant stings their burn.
Oh, that's right.
But imagine that happening inside your body.
Yeah.
On a much larger scale. Wow.
And this disrupts your body's pH balance, making your blood dangerously acidic.
Oh, geez.
Which can quickly become fatal.
Okay, that's definitely making me rethink my travel drink choices. So how much methanol are we talking about before it becomes a problem? Is it like a cumulative thing, or can just a single drink be dangerous?
Okay.
Unfortunately, it doesn't take much. Just 1 teaspoon can cause blindness.
Wow.
And a single shot glass can be lethal.
A single shot. That's terrifying. So if someone's traveling and they're offered a drink, what are some red flags they should look out for? How can you tell if something is potentially laced with methanol?
That's a great question. The initial symptoms of methanol poisoning are very similar to regular intoxication: nausea, dizziness, blurred vision, things you might just dismiss as having one too many.
So you might not think you're in any real danger. You might just think, oh, I'm having a rough night.
Exactly. And to make matters worse, those initial symptoms can subside sometimes for hours or even a day.
Oh, no.
Leading people to think they're okay, but
Then what?
the symptoms return, but this time way worse. Severe headaches, intense vomiting, abdominal pain, difficulty breathing.
Oh, wow.
And then it might be too late for effective treatment.
It's like a ticking time bomb.
Kind of.
So knowing the symptoms is crucial. But it also sounds like prevention is key.
Huh.
What are some practical steps people can take to avoid methanol poisoning in the first place?
There are some simple but important things you can do to protect yourself.
Okay.
First, always be wary of suspiciously cheap alcohol. If a deal seems too good to be true, it probably is.
Yeah, that's a good rule of thumb for life in general, I think.
Pretty much.
What if, the prices just seem generally lower in a certain country? Are there other ways to be sure you're getting the real deal?
Absolutely. The World Health Organization recommends always buying alcohol from reputable shops.
Okay.
Don't be afraid to be a little picky.
So maybe skip that sketchy back alley stand.
Probably a good idea. And always check the labels and seals carefully.
Okay.
Look for any signs of tampering. Make sure the seal's unbroken and the label it's legitimate.
Unbroken seal. That's your
Yeah.
first line of defense.
It's like a guarantee that no one's messed with the contents.
So we're talking bottled spirits here, right? What about other types of alcohol?
The Methanol Institute actually suggests sticking with canned drinks whenever possible.
Yeah.
Like beer, cider, wine, even pre-mixed cocktails in cans. They're generally considered safer options.
Is that because they're harder to tamper with?
Exactly. Plus, the unbroken seal provides that extra layer of security. It's a simple but effective way to minimize your risk.
This is great advice, especially for someone like me who loves to try local drinks when traveling. I'm definitely going to be more cautious from now on. But let's say, despite all these precautions, someone starts experiencing symptoms. What should they do?
That's where we'll pick up after a quick break.
Don't go anywhere. We'll be right back with more on methanol poisoning and, crucially, how to get help if you need it. So before the break, we were talking about all the things you can do to avoid methanol poisoning.
Right.
But let's say, despite taking every precaution, someone does start experiencing those symptoms.
Yeah.
What's the next step?
If you think you or someone you're with might have methanol poisoning, the most important thing is don't wait.
Don't wait.
Seek medical attention right away.
So even if you think it's just like a bad hangover or something,
Exactly.
it's better to be safe than sorry?
Absolutely. Time is really important when it comes to treating methanol poisoning.
Okay.
The sooner treatment can begin, the better the chances of a full recovery.
So what exactly does treatment for methanol poisoning involve?
The main goal is to stop the methanol from being metabolized into those harmful substances we talked about earlier, like formaldehyde and formic acid.
Right.
And one way to do that is with a medication called Fomisol.
Fomisol.
Yeah, it sounds a bit intimidating.
It does.
But it can be life-saving.
Okay.
What it does is it blocks the enzyme that breaks down methanol.
Okay.
So it prevents those toxic byproducts from forming in the first place.
So it kind of like hits the pause button on the poisoning process.
Exactly. And it gives your body a chance to get rid of the methanol naturally before it can cause too much damage.
That makes sense.
Ah.
What if Fomisol isn't available, though?
Right.
Are there other options?
Believe it or not, high doses of ethanol can be used in some cases.
Wait, really? Ethanol? That's like regular alcohol, right?
It is.
Wouldn't that just make the poisoning worse?
I know it sounds counterintuitive,
Yeah.
but there's a reason for it. Ethanol and methanol actually compete for those same enzymes in your liver.
Okay.
So it's like you're giving your liver a different job to focus on a less harmful one.
So the ethanol basically buys the body some time to process the methanol more slowly.
Exactly. It's not a perfect solution, of course.
Right.
But it can be helpful in emergency situations.
So no matter what treatment is used, it sounds like early intervention is key.
Absolutely. That's why it's so important to recognize the symptoms early on and get medical help right away.
Right.
Don't try to wait it out or sleep it off.
Yeah, don't just assume it's a hangover.
Right. Prompt treatment can make all the difference.
So we've been talking a lot about, the individual responsibility, but it seems like this issue also points to some wider problems with the way alcohol is produced globally.
You're absolutely right. This isn't just about travelers making informed decisions.
Right.
It's about better regulation and enforcement when it comes to alcohol production all over the world.
Because if methanol is so much cheaper than ethanol, isn't there always going to be a temptation for some producers to cut corners?
That's the problem. We need stricter quality control measures, more frequent inspections, tougher penalties for those who break the rules.
It makes you wonder why, we have such strict standards for food safety.
Right.
But not necessarily the same level of scrutiny when it comes to alcohol.
That's a good point. And it's a conversation that needs to be happening on a global scale.
Yeah.
We need to find ways to strengthen those regulations and make sure they're being enforced, particularly in areas where this is more common.
Are there any examples of, successful interventions in other countries that we can learn from?
Yeah, definitely. India's a good example.
Okay.
They've had some big challenges with methanol poisoning in the past.
Right.
But they've implemented a number of measures to address it.
Like what?
Things like stricter licensing for alcohol producers.
Okay.
They've also made it mandatory to add something to industrial alcohol to make it undrinkable.
Right, so people can't accidentally consume it.
Exactly. And they've launched some big public awareness campaigns to educate people about the risks.
So they're really tackling it from multiple angles.
They are prevention enforcement education. They've seen some good results.
Yeah.
It shows that progress is possible.
So it's not just about individual responsibility. It's also about, holding producers accountable and working together to
Yeah.
make the system safer.
Exactly. Everyone who's involved in the alcohol industry has a responsibility to ensure that what they're producing is safe.
That's a good point. For a lot of listeners, this might be a side of the alcohol industry that they've never really thought about before.
It's not something we often talk about.
Yeah, we worried about food poisoning, but, contaminated alcohol can be just as dangerous.
If not more so.
Right, because of those delayed symptoms and the possibility of long-term health problems.
Exactly.
It really makes you stop and think about the importance of being informed and making conscious choices.
It does. This conversation also highlights just how connected the world really is. What happens in one country can have ripple effects everywhere else.
It's a global issue.
It is.
So while we've been focusing on the risks for travelers,
Right.
this really affects everybody. It's a global public health issue that needs a global response.
Absolutely. And
Yeah.
it's an issue that affects individuals, communities, healthcare systems. It has a huge impact.
So beyond individual actions, what can we do on a larger scale to address this problem? What are some potential solutions that could really make a difference?
One of the most important things is improving access to information and education.
Okay.
People need to be aware of the risks associated with methanol poisoning, how to recognize the symptoms, what to do if they think they've been exposed.
Knowledge is power.
Exactly. And this is true for both consumers and producers.
Right.
We need to give people the information they need to make good decisions, whether it's choosing where to buy alcohol or understanding the importance of quality control in the production process.
So things like public awareness campaigns, educational programs
Exactly.
would really help.
Initiatives like that can make a big difference in raising awareness and changing behavior.
Okay, what about on the regulatory side? Are there any policies or, international agreements that could be helpful?
There are a number of things we could do.
Okay.
For example, we could strengthen those international collaborations on food safety standards,
Okay.
make sure they specifically address alcohol production and trade.
Okay.
We could also work on setting up a global database to track methanol poisoning outbreaks
Interesting.
and share information about contaminated products.
So a more coordinated approach where countries are working together to share information and best practices.
Exactly. This would allow us to identify trends, see how those contaminated products are moving, and respond more effectively to outbreaks.
So we need this multi-pronged approach
We do.
where we're combining individual responsibility with collective action and actually changing the system.
Oh, got it.
Well, I think this deep dive has given our listeners a lot to think about.
I hope so.
We've covered the science, the symptoms treatment, the global context. What are some key takeaways that you hope our listeners will remember from all of this?
Well, first and foremost, awareness is absolutely key.
Right.
Understanding that methanol poisoning is a real threat, knowing the symptoms, and just being aware of the risks associated with consuming alcohol, especially in unfamiliar environments, is crucial.
So being informed and taking those simple precautions that we talked about
Yeah.
can go a long way in protecting yourself.
Absolutely. And don't hesitate to seek medical attention if you have any concerns at all.
Right.
Remember, early treatment is essential.
Okay, so we've talked about prevention, symptoms, treatment, the global context. What else should we consider?
I think it's important to remember that the vast majority of alcoholic beverages are perfectly safe.
Okay.
We're talking about a relatively small percentage that are contaminated.
Right.
So by being aware of the risks and taking sensible precautions, you can greatly reduce your chances of running into methanol-laced alcohol.
It's not about avoiding alcohol altogether.
Right.
It's about being smart and making informed choices.
Exactly. And if you do have any doubts or concerns, don't hesitate to ask questions. Talk to your doctor, consult reputable sources like the World Health Organization or the Methanol Institute.
Right.
There's a lot of good information out there that can help keep you safe.
Knowledge is power.
Yeah.
And in this case, it can literally be life-saving.
It's true.
So this conversation doesn't end here.
It doesn't. We need to keep talking about this issue, raising awareness, and working to make things better. It's a team effort.
Yeah, we can all do our part.
Absolutely.
Well, I think our listeners are leaving this deep dive much more informed and empowered to make safe choices. Any final thoughts?
I'd like to leave everyone with this draft. Travel should be a time of exploration and enjoyment.
Yeah.
So don't let fear hold you back,
Right.
but do arm yourself with knowledge. Be informed, be cautious, and most importantly, stay curious.
Beautifully said. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive. Until next time, stay safe.
Be safe.
Stay informed and safe travels.
You know, it's been really eye-opening talking about this with you. I have to admit, before we started this deep dive, I never really thought twice about the alcohol I was drinking,
Right?
especially when I was traveling. It always felt like such a normal part of the experience, like trying new drinks, enjoying the local culture.
Of course.
But now I'm definitely going to be more cautious.
I understand that this information might make some people feel anxious,
Yeah,
but like we've been talking about, awareness is the first step towards making safer choices.
right.
It's not about living in fear. It's about being empowered with knowledge.
Mhm.
And thankfully, there are a lot of resources out there to help people stay informed. That's true.
Yeah.
We've already mentioned the World Health Organization and the Methanol Institute. Are there any other sources you'd recommend for listeners who want to do a little bit more research on their own?
Yeah, absolutely. For reliable medical information, I always recommend the CDC,
The CDC.
the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention.
Right.
They have a ton of information on their website about all sorts of health topics, including methanol poisoning.
Okay.
And for those who are interested in the regulatory side of things, I suggest checking out the WHO's International Food Safety Authorities Network,
Okay.
or INFOSAN for short.
Infosan.
Yeah, they focus on food safety issues that have global impact, like we've been talking about with methanol contamination.
You know, a lot of people think that food and drink safety is only a concern in developing countries.
Right.
But as we've discussed, methanol poisoning can happen anywhere.
Absolutely. Even in countries that have pretty strong regulations, there's always a chance that something could slip through the cracks.
So no country is immune to this problem.
That's right.
That's why it's so important for people to be aware and make responsible choices.
It is.
Imagine you're at a beach bar enjoying a beautiful sunset and someone offers you a drink.
Oh, okay.
Now you're armed with this knowledge, to ask yourself a few questions. Where
Right.
did this alcohol come from? Does the label look right? Is the seal unbroken?
Those simple checks can make all the difference.
It's like a mental checklist
Yeah.
you can run through before taking that first sip.
Exact.
And if anything seems off, just trust your gut and politely decline.
Always a good idea. It's better to err on the side of caution when it comes to your health.
Definitely.
Oh.
And it's not just about protecting yourself, right?
No.
Like if you see something that seems suspicious, or you hear about someone else getting sick after drinking,
Yeah.
don't be afraid to say something. You might end up saving someone's life.
That's a really important point. We all have a responsibility to look out for one another, especially when we're traveling.
So as we wrap up this deep dive, what's one final thought you want to leave our listeners with?
Traveling is an amazing opportunity to experience new cultures, connect with people, and make memories.
It is.
So don't let the fear of methanol poisoning stop you from seeing the world.
Right.
Instead, let this knowledge empower you to make good choices, stay safe, and enjoy every moment.
Well said. And remember, listeners, this conversation doesn't end here.
Right.
Share this information with your friends and family, especially those who love to travel. Spread the word, raise awareness, and let's work together to prevent methanol poisoning.
Absolutely.
That's all the time we have for today's deep dive. Thanks for joining us, and until next time, stay curious, stay informed, and safe travels.